for its COVID-19 response. This is 3 billion pesos higher than the 352 billion pesos spent as of May 27, after more funds were distributed to relief packages such as the Social Amelioration Program, that's according to the Budget Department. Now, the increased spending was largely due to the 500 million in new allotment releases issued to Small Businesses Corporation for its Pondo sa Pagbabago at Pag-Asenso program as of May 2019, and the 2 billion pesos released to cover the remaining allocations for SAP as of June 3. Meanwhile, the Asian Development Bank has extended another loan to the Philippines. This time, it's worth $500 million for the Pantawid Pamilyang Pilipino program, or 4Ps. This brings total lending to the country to a record $2.6 billion so far this year. ADB's total lending for the country has already reached a record high of $2.6 billion. Other loans the ADB approved for the Philippines this 2020 include that $1.7 billion for COVID-19. All right, let's have a quick check this time around of how things are faring for the local bourse. You'd see in this chart right here, you have the index starting the day in the red. We are at 6,338 here, down 1.6%. We are following declines being seen across Asia at the moment. That's, after Asian indices did experience a pullback here as expected after the Fed dropped hints that the U.S.'s economic downfall from the pandemic might be in for the long haul. This is a signal maintaining rates near zero in the years to come. Let's have a quick check of how things are faring, at least for Asia. Like what I mentioned earlier here, it's a bit of a bloodbath here with Japanese indices, like the topics in the Nikkei in the red here. The topics is down close a percent. Really here, you have the Nikkei also down by 1 2/10%. Likewise, you have the Hanks and also edging lower here, 0.5%. The Kospi, more muted trading here for the Kospi here, but still in the red nonetheless. You also have our Australian indices here really declining over 2%, as you can see over here. Now, recall, of course, in the local bourse, we did see the index retreating as early as yesterday, shedding close to 2 2/10% to end at 6,439. But things looking far worse, at least for today, according to Luis Limlingan of Regina Capital. The market's really taking time to digest the size of the recent rally that we saw in the PSEI. As you all know, you have the local bourse did manage to at least take flight to the 6,000 level early June after maintaining a cruise control at 5,000 from March to May. But that rally, says Claire Alviar of Philstocks, does not really hold much weight here. Let me just shift to our chart here in the PSEI here. According to Claire Alviar of Philstocks, that rally that we saw for the index does not really hold much weight, as there really was no strong catalyst aside from hopes of an economic recovery when lockdowns were eased. But one more reason for that decline, according to Luis Limlingan, investors opted to stay on the sidelines ahead of that Fed meeting. And more on that meeting here, like what I mentioned earlier, you have Chairman Jerome Powell signaling that they won't be holding back from pumping stimulus to the U.S. economy until labor market has healed. That includes the possibility of keeping rates close to zero. And according to some officials, they are hinting to the possibility that might actually be the case until 2022. But over here, much to recover from as well. You have trade activity looking shriveled more than ever. We did break the figures yesterday during our newscast. Record-setting plunges here for both exports and imports. April exports shrinking by 50.8% to $2.8 billion. Imports likewise taking a 65.3% nosedive to $3.28 billion, sending trade deficit to $499.21 million, a big disparity from the $3.8 billion shortfall in last year. That's our narrowest deficit in years. Now, on to some developments. Clearer guidelines now here for telcos on the building of common towers as the DICT released its guidelines, what's very telling in this new set of guidelines here is that they are no longer going to limit common tower companies to just two. At the same time, they are not going to restrict telcos from setting up their own or their own towers here, but they are also requiring telcos to provide ample access slots for other players and the DICT to co-locate or share in that tower. Now, that too would require permission from the NTC. And in case you're wondering, existing towers built by the two telco players are untouchable and will not be covered by the new set of rules. Speaking of which, let's check in on the two players here. Things not faring so well here for PLDT. A more muted trading, really. It is quite flat at the moment, but still a 1,224 PLDT, of course, represented by the white line, as you can see in this chart right here. Globe likewise now at 2,162 as represented by the orange line in that chart. Now, moving on to one other utility provider, you have Meralco. They've been ordered to appear before the Energy Regulatory Commission, that is for allegedly violating certain orders from the commission, particularly on charges during the ECQ. Meralco maintains that no breach was made during that period. Let's check in on Meralco following really the declines here that we're seeing across the local bourse. They are down close to 0.6%, now at 290 pesos and 40 centavos a piece. Now, here are their stories we're watching this morning. Hotels and other guest accommodations are now required to obtain authorization from the Tourism Department before resuming operations. Tourism Chief Berna Romulo Puyat says the no DOT certification, no operation policy intends to ensure the safety and health of all guests. This applies to establishments such as hotels, resorts, and tourist inns restarting their business as the government eases lockdown restrictions. Puyat said the application will be free of charge and warned businesses that failure to comply will be subject to penalties. Meanwhile, the BIR has directed all online businesses to register and declare past transactions to help boost government revenue after collections plunged in April. The agency ordered all businesses with digital transactions, including those involved in online payment and delivery, to ensure they are tax compliant by end July. Now, PAGCOR is hoping to resume operations of POGOs this month. The Philippine Star reports that PAGCOR Chairman and CEO Andrea Domingo said POGOs have already complied with some BIR requirements, which in turn will let them continue their gaming operations. POGOs were already given a go signal to resume partial operations last month when quarantine rules were relaxed in some areas. Before reopening, POGOs and their service providers are required to pay their franchise taxes, income taxes, and withholding taxes, as well as guarantee fund of about 350 million pesos. PAGCOR said offshore gaming operators have already paid the guarantee fund in full, on top of volunteering to pay their Filipino employees who did not work in April. The Philippine Star said, though, that both PAGCOR and BIR have yet to reply on their inquiries on how many POGO firms have already complied with the requirements. Now, AMRO said the Philippine financial system may face as much as $505 million or 25.2 billion pesos in incremental collateral damage due to the pandemic. The organization said that because of the health crisis, banks are facing sharp drops in revenues, increasing bad loans, and a rise in credit and contagion risks. To come up with an estimate on the so-called collateral damage, AMRO did a stress test for additional expected costs from shocks to individual ASEAN plus 3 banks to the wider financial system. The Philippines' $505 million potential collateral damage is the fourth highest in the region after China's $19 billion, Singapore's $2.9 billion, and Japan's $2.5 billion. AMRO said the total incremental expected losses is attributable to two key sources, and these are direct credit losses from defaulted obligations and the collateral damage due to contagion through financial interconnectedness. Meanwhile, AMRO projected the estimated additional credit loss of Philippine banks from source entity to direct creditors at $252 million based on the 9 banks it studied. Now, just over the weekend, there's been a barrage of reports alleging cloned Facebook accounts. Such online breaches are expected more than ever under the new normal. With this increased threat, how can organizations better shield themselves from these attacks? To get insights, let's pick the brains of Rajesh Ganeshan. He's the Vice President of Products at ManageEngine. Good morning, Rajesh. You are, of course, coming to us here from Chennai in India. Great to have you here with us on the show. Let's start off. Would you say that one silver lining, at least to this pandemic, is how it's bringing into focus the need for cybersecurity?
Absolutely. So thank you very much, Jester, for having me. I'm very happy to be here. Good morning to everyone listening. I hope you're all staying safe. And going back to your question, so this pandemic, so though it's unfortunate, has put a lot of things in the right perspective. One is the approach to information security across companies, across individuals, across governments. So I absolutely agree with that, right? So the single most important thing when companies are trying to go remote is how do they ensure information security for not only their company, their data, and also for their employees and customers, which is extremely important.
Given that, how much of a concern should data breaches and security be now in a company's agenda, given the new normal? How much of a priority? We're talking investments here should actually be allocated for data security and management.
Absolutely. Let's imagine how this scenario is panning out. So far, at least the perception was for the technology team, for the security team inside a company, that they were securing one large office, right? But now it's a nightmare scenario. They not only have to continue ensuring security for their company premises, now because people, hundreds of them, thousands of them working from their home or whatever remote locations they are in, they have to now secure that one big office and also these thousands of small offices, right? So that is the scenario they are in. It's an extremely a new turf for anyone to deal with. I would say you just have to leverage this scenario to strengthen two of your programs, right? So the first one is to increase the visibility, right? So as a technology team, as a security expert, when I am sitting in the office, I have the visibility of how people move around, how people operate. Now everything, right? So when I say everything, people, the systems, the applications have gone out of my sight. How do I now go and protect them? What do I not see, right? So the first part is to create this visual map of what you have in the company, what you want to protect, because that is extremely important. What each user is doing on a daily basis, what each device is posture at any given point in time. You start a program to make sure you have all this information available all the time, right? This is number one. The second part is imparting education to users. So I can give you a data point that Google announced last week or the week before. On any given day now, there are about 18 million phishing emails going out every single day around the topic of COVID, right? Imagine as individuals, as small businesses, we are all like going through tough times and there are government aids and you want information. You are looking for any information that could help you. And this is the time that is being abused by people running these phishing scams, sending out these millions of phishing emails, and people fall prey, right? And this is exactly what I'm talking about. The social engineering attempts to security incidents are on the rise. And these are things security leaders should continuously educate their employees, their users about, right? So not fall prey to ransomware attacks, your phishing attacks, or social engineering. It is come to limelight, and you don't put people on a classroom and teach these stuff. You take them through drills, like very similar to fire drills. Do some mock drills, make them understand the impact, the consequences, and also educate them to immediately catch and report any such attempts that happen in their infrastructure.
Okay, very interesting that you mentioned that here, because my next question is, was there a notable increase in ransomware attacks and security
Right,
breaches during the pandemic? And you did mention phishing attacks here, but what other
right.
common attacks have we recorded, or at least have we noticed so far?
Mhm. So there are two types of attacks, right? That hackers typically exploit. So one is exploiting the gullibility of the users, as I said, right? So send a very normal, legitimate-looking email, ask them to click a link, right? So, but
Mhm.
this still leaves a record of emails coming and going, right? So what people do now is they post like a very close colleague, right? Send people a WhatsApp message. Give me a password for this service because the company needs it urgently, right? And most people they don't have this what we call a situational awareness. They don't think of like 10 different options why this person could be asking me for the password at this point. They with all the good intentions do this, right? So this is the first part they really target is the gullibility of the users, and the second is they attack weak devices and weak networks, right? So devices that are not patched, devices that do not have good antivirus, anti-malware, anti-phishing software installed, because let's face it, right? So every single day attackers come with new ways of exploiting the vulnerabilities. The security team, the IT organization has to make sure the devices, the network that the employees use have absolutely no loopholes, right? So these two are the focus area for any company, right? So you do have a very good endpoint security management software suite that companies could leverage to not only take care of devices and network, but also contextually teach employees about the importance of security or the importance of situational awareness that I talked about. They get a WhatsApp message or they get an email. You need a pop-up saying this looks not so legitimate, right? So please don't take this action. That intelligence has to be built and implemented by some security leadership inside the company, and that's you immediately address this particular menace.
Well, that also proved to be a challenge here. That would pretty much require as well the upskilling and equipping of IT teams, and not
Right.
just IT teams. In fact, you have even the regular employees would have to upskill and be equipped for given the new normal here. So, is that going to be a challenge here, especially to meet the demands of beefing up secure data security for companies?
Absolutely. You touched upon a very important point, right? So security, we all have to understand, is not something you outsource to one particular team. It's not the accountability of one a team or like set of people. It is everybody's responsibility. To give you an example, right? So heavens forbid, you make a mistake and you end up being on the court. You cannot argue saying I was not aware of a particular law, right? As they say, ignorance of a law is not an excuse for you to make a mistake. The same thing is with is true for security, right? Every single person, every single employee in the company, they should be aware of the importance of security, the security principles. Every action they do, they should understand the impact, the consequences, and they should go through. They should be proactive, not expect somebody to teach them, but they should be proactive enough to know when they are using information systems. They should know the consequences, the significance of the actions they do, any mistakes they commit, and then it's again a continuous process, right? My point here is it's a collective responsibility of everybody working in the organization.
Well, Rajesh, so there's of course an array of tools and services. I believe you did
Right.
mention a number of them earlier. There's a number of tools and services at the disposal of these organizations, but will that prove to be a challenge for a country like the Philippines, where we still lag in technological infrastructure and even connectivity?
That is very true. I do agree with that. You have technology, but access to technology, the affordability of technology, and also the important point, the upskilling of people to leverage technology. I do see some gaps, but I was visiting Manila last year, so I cannot say the difference is huge, right? That's the positive news. When I travel to first world countries like the US or somewhere in Europe, the level of knowledge, the level of awareness is the same with countries like Philippines or India or along Southeast Asia. The difference is probably around the affordability, the reach of technology, but even that gap is be coming down, because one thing we need to realize, the internet, the access to technology has broken all barriers, right? We are all on the same playing field. So there is no more excuse of saying this is not affordable or I'm not skilled enough, as I said. So that gap is reducing, and my belief is it will absolutely not be there in very soon.
Okay, but with most still working from home, how does one secure home networks? What's the role here of every employee in securing data and systems even while they are working from home?
Yeah, so that's where it starts with one team taking the ownership. Say, for example, I have my laptop working at home. How much ever I try, my children are going to just take it and use it, right? To watch movies or play a game, right? So this is where the first point that I talked about. The organization should have complete knowledge and continuous knowledge about what is happening to the corporate device, right? So for what purpose it's being used for. And there are technology, there are tools available to manage devices remotely. So corporate devices, it could be a smartphone, tablet, or a laptop. So you could actually create segments, one for corporate use, so which you never share even with your family members, right? So and because everybody is sitting at home, sometimes my children need to attend online classes on a Saturday. I could give them my corporate device, but the segment that they use would be completely different from where the corporate data resides, right? So that is how organizations must approach. Proactive approach, a policy-based approach, a tools-driven approach to policy take care of that this particular situation where everybody is working outside the office.
So you think also it's quite advantageous, or is this something that organizations and employees should take advantage of? The wide array here of online classes now being made available, just so they could actually equip themselves when it comes to data security.
Absolutely. So that is one great source. The other point, which I usually tell people, is something we follow in our company. So as I said, putting people, making them sit through a classroom is one way of teaching, but people do not retain a lot, right? So how much do you remember from your college classes or you're sitting in the school, right? You remember the important 5-10%, but the expectation here is 90%, 95%. So this is where contextual learning helps. I'll give you an example. So you could be a salesperson working on the CRM system. You are trying to print a file or you are trying to save a file locally. So previously, when software were not used to be very smart, you just allow that action. Now, the security organization can introduce intelligence that says when software is about to print, it can actually say this file seems to have personal information of people like email ID or first name, last name, or phone number. Do you want to continue to print? Or even better, it can go ahead printing, asking all those personal information, right? So this is contextual learning. It also puts a note. You tried printing it. I printed this for you, but I marked out all the personal information. Now the user knows it is a big mistake to just print anything or save any file randomly to the disk, right? So or move things around where things could be very sensitive. So you need to be aware of what is inside a file before you share it, before you print it. And you're not thinking about it all the time. So you should have tools, you should have systems in place that would contextually tell you in real time that this particular file has personal information, so be watchful, be careful. And once people go through it 10 times, 20 times, that becomes a habit. So before even they print, now they think. And that's how you create security awareness, situational awareness for people, in addition to a
Okay, lastly now, Rajesh, and very quickly, with digital services also booming, how can companies boost the confidence of their customers that their platform is safe?
Yeah, so for customers, the point is actually simple and straightforward. I believe talking in the perspective of Philippines now has a data privacy law, right? So 2 years ago, 3 years ago, this area was very vague because most technology companies, in the way they wrote their license agreement, they washed off all liability, right, with what happens to customer data. But after GDPR came in the Europe in 2018, things have absolutely changed. So this has become a law. If you're a bank, right, nobody asks how accountable you are for the money that people have deposited, right? Everybody knows what the bank is supposed to do. the same is the scenario for any company that now collects, stores, and processes people's data. You just follow the data protection law, the privacy law that is in force in your region, in your country, and that takes care of everything, right? So GDPR and the Philippines law talks about the appointment of a data protection officer. So how do you disclose data breaches? How do you do data protection assessments periodically of your company? The whole thing is made very, very simple, very clear for all the organizations. It is a law that you have to comply. So you just appoint a data protection officer and let that person, let her take care of the whole thing, right? So that's the best way to approach for organizations to make sure their customers are peaceful about the data they are trusting with that organization.
All right, thank you very much for your insights, Rajesh Ganeshan. He's a Vice President of Products at ManageEngine. Thank you for your time, sir.
My pleasure, Jester. Thanks for having me. You all have a good day and stay safe. Thank you.
Time now for a quick check of how our local bourse is performing this Thursday, rainy Thursday at that here. You have the index still in the red here. However, managing to pare back those losses that we did see earlier in the trade. Recall that about 30 minutes ago, you have the index even declining by over 2%, but somehow they've managed, at least the local bourse managed to pare back those losses. We are now down close to 8%, still at the 6,300 level at 6377.36 to be exact, really following the declines that we're seeing across Asia here. That, of course, after the Fed did signal that the road to recovery is going to be long for the U.S. economy, with even some officials hinting at keeping rates near zero until 2022. Just let's have a quick check of Asia once again here, like what we did see earlier. Still a sea of red here. You have the topics in the Nikkei declining. The Nikkei, in fact, down over 8% here. Also, the Hang Seng here now down 0.4%. The Kospi also here in the decline here, edging lower, close to 3%. But still, it's our Australian equities here down by 2.2%. But moving over to some local developments here, you now have Trade Secretary Mon Lopez confirming that the IATF is at least recommending to allow dine-in services at 30% capacity. That's going to start by June 15. Let's have a check of, according to Lopez as well, that's going to be regardless whether GCQ or MGCQ is being implemented in some areas. The recommendation here is for gradual reopening, so as for jobs to be restored here. Let's have a quick check of our leaders and laggards for the day. At least, let me just refresh this very quickly now. Earlier in the day, we did see just a number of stocks here in the green. So far, however, you have Security Bank, still our biggest gainer here. It is up 0.29%. MegaWorld likewise gaining 1.9%. A number of stocks as well. You have, however, on the losing end, Robinson's Land declining 5.2%. LTG also here in the red, edging lower over 4%. And that's a first look into business day this Thursday, June 11, 2020. Catch us again tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. I'm Jess De Los Santos. We are One News.